I think the president deserves a great deal of credit for the amount of energy and effort he's put into trying to bring these two sides to an end of this war. He wants to see this killing stop. As for any deadlines, he wants to...
On the night of November 24th to 25th, Ukraine came under large-scale Russian aerial attacks, with capital city Kyiv bearing the brunt of strikes that shook residential districts and key infrastructure sites. Russian forces launched a powerful aerial assault that targeted both critical energy infrastructure and densely populated residential areas in Kyiv, aiming to disrupt daily life and weaken the city's resilience. According to local reports, the Russian military used a combination of attack drones and Kinzhal hypersonic missiles in the overnight barrage. Ukraine's energy ministry described the overnight strikes as a massive combined attack on the country's energy infrastructure facilities, warning of fresh risks to power and heating in the middle of winter. The head of Kyiv city's military administration said that at least 6 people were injured in the attack, with emergency services racing to evacuate residents and treat the wounded as fires spread. City officials stressed that investigations were still underway to determine the full extent of casualties and structural damage, cautioning that the numbers could rise as rescue teams gained access to all sites. Explosions were first reported shortly after 1 a.m. local time, followed by a series of successive bangs as additional drones and missiles were intercepted or struck targets across different districts. Several multi-story residential buildings in Kyiv's central Pechersky district were damaged and set ablaze, forcing late-night evacuations as firefighters battled large fires on upper floors. One 22-story apartment building reportedly sustained damage on multiple floors, with images shared by the Kyiv Independent showing gaping holes and scorched facades where homes had been hit. In the Dniprovsky district on the other side of the Dnipro River, a 9-story residential building was also set on fire during the attack, leaving several apartments gutted and residents displaced. Earlier in the night, Ukraine's Air Force had issued a nationwide missile threat warning after Russian MiG-31 bombers were detected taking off from their bases, prompting residents to seek shelter. Russian missile and drone activity was also reported in other regions, including the Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv areas, highlighting that the overnight assault extended well beyond the capital alone. The massive attack on Kyiv came as diplomats met in Geneva for ongoing peace talks, underlining the stark contrast between efforts to negotiate and Russia's continued use of large-scale strikes. The United States is currently working with Ukraine to finalize a peace proposal aimed at eventually stopping the war, though officials caution that any agreement must still address major security concerns. Meanwhile, President Trump appears to have stepped back from his previously touted November 27th deadline for Kyiv to accept the deal, signaling more flexible timelines as the talks grow more complex.
Steve, reaction to those indictments being thrown out?
On Ukraine, is President Zelensky come to the United States this week? Are there a couple of points, you mentioned on the Fox interview, a couple of points that are on?
Yeah. So there are no plans at this moment in time. As you know, things can change very quickly around here, so we'll keep you all apprised, but there's no meeting scheduled right now. As for where we are, I spoke with Secretary Rubio at length. I spoke with the president as well. Everybody inside feels optimistic about what happened and transpired yesterday in Geneva. Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, the whole team really worked through the points of that 28-point peace plan that the United States authored with input from both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, and ultimately the vast majority of these points have been agreed upon. The Ukrainians have worked on language with us together, and you heard that from their delegation directly yesterday. So we feel as though we're in a very good place. Of course, we have to make sure that all of these points are agreed to, and then of course we're going to have to make sure the other party in this war, the Russians, agree to them as well. But I think the president deserves a great deal of credit for the amount of energy and effort he's put into trying to bring these two sides to an end of this war. He wants to see this killing stop. As for any deadlines, he wants to see this end as soon as possible.
Does the president put pressure on Putin or Zelensky if this doesn't work?
The president's been putting a lot of pressure on both leaders for this entire time. We've been talking with both sides. He's been talking to both leaders directly for 10 months now. So yes, you can expect that pressure to continue. The president wants this war to end.
Caroline, please. You would not go into the sticking points of the disagreement between the two parties in the Ukraine peace process, but how flexible is the president in coming to a deal, and will the Europeans be part of a final negotiation with Zelensky?
I think he's been quite flexible already. We've been watching this war go on for 10 months. He's talked to both leaders countless times. Our team has engaged with both the Russians and the Ukrainians extensively. As I said, there is a sense of urgency. The president wants to see this deal come together, and he wants to see this war end.
President Trump asking for Xi Jinping's help and putting pressure on Putin to help end the war in Ukraine?
I won't get into the details of the conversation this morning other than what the president put out on Truth Social. He put out his own readout of that, and I will leave it to that. But I did speak with him about the call. It lasted about an hour, and it was a very positive call. The focus of the call was really Russia-Ukraine did come up, but the focus was mainly on the trade deal that we are working on with China and those relations and how they are moving in a positive direction. President also addressed our farmers, and we are pleased with what we've seen from the Chinese, and they feel the same way. And the president and President Xi discussed continuing to stay in correspondence following their very productive meeting in South Korea.
Questions on Ukraine. Does the progress that you just laid out change the Thanksgiving Day deadline for Ukraine to come to an agreement, or does the president still want something more definitive by Thursday? And then on the Comey and James case, does the president still have confidence in Lindsey Elliott?
Absolutely, he does, to your second question. As for your first question, with respect to the deadline, the president wants to see this deal come together as quickly as possible, and he trusts that his team is doing everything they can to get it over the finish line.
There are a few Republican senators who are critical of the 28-point peace plan, including Senator Rounds, Senator Graham, Senator McConnell. What do you say to those senators who say that this is giving too much away to Russia? And has Russia made any concessions as it relates to a possible peace deal concerning ending the war in Ukraine?
I would point any critics to the words of the Ukrainians yesterday, in which they said that they feel very positive about this plan. They've been very involved. They have had direct input on the language of this plan, and that we are in direct communication and correspondence with them. Any idea, let me just finish with this, the idea that the United States of America is not engaging with both sides equally in this war to bring it to an end is a complete and total fallacy. And I saw a lot of misinformation and rumors and allegations against people in this building, such as Secretary Rubio and Special Envoy Wynkoff and the president himself, that they are favoring one side over the other. That could not be further from the truth. I have watched as the president and his team have worked around the clock overnight with both sides on endless phone calls, endless meetings to try to bring this war to a close. And any suggestion otherwise is a complete misunderstanding of the facts. It's coming from people who have no idea what they're talking about, or people who are pushing their own agenda, or maybe people who don't want to see this war come to an end. I don't know. Maybe they're profiting off of it. Maybe they benefit from it in some way, but nobody in this building benefits from war. We want to see this war come to an end, and that's what the president and his team are proudly working to do. And I think the critics should just take a step back and think about what happened with Israel and Gaza. There were a lot of doubters, and we got the hostages out, and this president secured a peace deal that still exists and is ongoing today. So everyone should just respect the work this administration is doing and watch the process unfold.